I am so excited to introduce our Direction Not Perfection community today to Lisa Salisbury. She is the host of Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well podcast for women who want to stop obsessing about everything they eat and feel confident in their ability to lose weight. Yes, please. Welcome, Lisa. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, I love when we get other podcast hosts on here because it's the switching. Now you're in the hot seat. I do it
Yes.
too. And sometimes it's like, wait a minute, I want to ask the questions. I don't want to be in the
Yeah.
hot seat. Yes. So I
Uh,
kind of want to dive right in. I love your title of your podcast, Eat Well, but then Think Well comes right after that. I'm kind of curious how this all came about and how the title appeared for you.
yeah. So it's actually I just use the same title for everything. It's the title of my coaching program, of my business, because it just really those are the three pillars I really cover. So of course, we're going to talk about what we're eating if we're trying to lose weight, right? So we want to
Mhm.
eat well, and that means for our own bodies. I always say your food journal is the most important nutritional study you'll ever read. So we want to eat well for our bodies, that bioindividuality, and then we need to think well about it as well, because there's no one that has hated themselves thin long term. We
Mhm.
have got to think not only about our bodies well, but about our food. People talk a lot about like food freedom, and that comes all from the way we are thinking about food and the way we are thinking about eating. And so I do a lot of my coaching on thoughts and feelings. I was trained at the life coach school, so I use the self-coaching model designed there. And I use that model to guide you through your thinking about when you want to eat, when you're eating, when you're not hungry, what we're thinking about when we are eating and we're thinking maybe we're full, but maybe we're not. All of that is happening in the brain. And then the live well pillar is about all of the other parts of health that help us to live amazing and to help our health span match our lifespan so we can be healthy all the way into our 80s, 90s. We're talking about movement there, sleep, and also just making your life amazing and interesting so that food does not have the job of entertainer, compensator, and comforter, right? We need to be making our lives amazing so that food doesn't always have that job.
Yes, that's so good. You hit on so many good points, but I just want to pull back out that health span versus lifespan for a minute because I know our listeners have heard that, but I really want that to sink in. Like when you're having that conversation with one of your clients, what's some of your talk around that?
Yeah, well, I have this thing about living to 100. And most of my clients think I'm crazy. But yeah, we talk about function so much because I I do not help people lose weight to get up on a stage. I am not talking about getting a quote unquote bikini body. I'm talking about making your body function in the way that you want it to long term. We want to be able to get up and down off the floor with our grandchildren, not just right now when you're 30 or 40. Most of us probably can do that at this point. I'm 47. I'm still able to get up and down off the floor without thinking about it. But you may have parents that you see, like my mom is in her late 70s and gets stuck on the floor. She purposely never gets on the floor because she can't get off the floor. And so I see that and I'm like, I need to build my strength now and understand how my strength training and my movement and my nutrition all combine to give me long-term health. And I know you've had a guest on before talking about the training that we do in our 20s. Maybe we need to be training like we're 40, because if we're so hard on our joints and not paying attention to those things now, we're not going to have the longevity. So training for longevity just means that you are using a professional in that way, but just we're not going so hard that we're burning out our bodies when we're in our, those 20s, 30s, and even 40s, that we have some long-term goals there.
That's so good and so well said. I feel like it comes back to that functional movement, but you're preaching functional in every facet of life. We can transfer that
Mhm.
over into food choices, into movement, to the long-term fight. And I always think how cool if we really could shift our community's brains to that same spot. And
Mhm.
I always say this phrase, keep your eyes on your own paper, because we can settle into that long-term fight, but then somebody else gives like a quicker fix or a quicker
Mhm.
something that sounds a little more exciting, and it's really easy to jump ship. So I know you've gone through, you can tell our listeners too about like your journey and what has helped you to
Mm.
settle into long-term thinking.
Yeah, because not only do we want to train as if we're living to 100, but we want to eat that way too. My history includes a lot of dieting, and there isn't any one of those diets that I want to be doing when I'm 85. Like, none of that. I don't want to do any of that. And so it doesn't really make sense. Everything I did was very short term. Everything had a name. This, you're going to do this for 2 weeks and then this for 3 weeks, these phases. I would do 6 week slim downs. I would do boot camps. I would do just anything with a cutesy name or an app to go with it or a book that I would buy or a food plan. I I started dieting in high school. I brought home a food plan. It was a 3 day diet, 3 days. What was I going to accomplish in 3 days besides water weight? But sadly, my parents did it with me, right? Which, no shade to my parents. I had great parents, but they were maybe thinking that they were supporting me. But what I learned was that they thought I needed to lose weight too. So that was very confusing to my young brain because I was getting that quite a lot in high school that several adults from different areas of my life told me I needed to lose some weight, which is really crazy when I look at photos. I'm like, nope, nope, did not.
Nope.
Did not need
Yes.
to. But, it was the early 90s and, the thin is best, as thin as possible, and that waif like look. And so I started having babies. And so, 9 years of pregnancy and nursing. And I did not deal well with my weight going up and down mentally. I did not I did not have the tools back then. And so I had thoughts like, especially with my last baby, well, this is the last time I can be fat. Like, that is not true. It's not the same as being overweight, being pregnant, right? So, but my brain was like, this is the last time it's acceptable for you to be bigger in your body. And so you should eat all these things now because you won't be able to later. So I created tons of scarcity around food with my brain in that pregnancy, which I think led into just, decades of yo-yo dieting. So what really got me out was actually the last straw for me was macro counting. I know, and whenever I say this, I'm always like, I know it's good for some people. And I also don't shame myself for doing it because I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how much protein is in things. Like, I learned a lot, but it was not a long-term solution for me. And I was doing it long-term. And so the anxiety just creeped up until I couldn't go to restaurants unless they had like the full nutrition menu or nutrition information. I had a hard time eating at other people's homes. And so I couldn't, my social life was suffering, or I would do the social thing and my anxiety would suffer. So for me, it was sliding into orthorexia. It was just sliding into disordered eating, right? I don't think I had an eating disorder, but I was eating in a disordered way. So, so much that I was bringing my kitchen scale to the dinner table in front of my children, weighing my portion. Like, that was not what I wanted to portray to them. That for me was not a healthy way to live. And when we're talking about lifespan, I'm not going to weigh my chicken when I'm 80. Like, it's not practical. I don't want to do that. And so I got into coaching and to really using my brain to think about food and to think about myself rather than checking, I like to say, like, let's learn to check in with your body, not a diet app. Because I never asked myself, am I hungry? What do I want? I looked at my app and let it tell me, oh, you need more protein. So I'm eating lunch meat in front of the refrigerator. Like, that was not satisfying to my brain. It wasn't necessary. I wasn't hungry. It just that my app told me I needed more protein for that day. So it's not great.
Yeah, I think you touched on so many points where people could be raising their hand and going, "Up, yep, been there, done that. I know that feeling." Or are you just even bringing up the idea of checking in with ourselves? We forget we're allowed to like ask ourselves, am I hungry? Where am I on that hunger scale? All of that.
Mhm.
So again, thank you for that journey because I guarantee other people have been step by step with you on that journey. And then I always think it's so hopeful and awesome to be sitting with someone who's like been there, done that, and I'm recovering. Like none of us are ever to
Mhm.
a point of like perfect, but recovering
Totally.
to a point where we know how to jump back on. That resilience factor has been built into
Mhm.
you and it's all a slippery slope, right? Like I feel like anything can take us back a moment to where we used to be, but it's those skills on how to self-talk to bring us
Mhm.
back. So, yeah, that's so good. You mentioned this. I teach a lot about using your higher brain rather than your lower habit brain. So this was
Mhm.
interesting to make your health and nutrition decisions. I haven't really heard of like a lower habit brain or stated that way before. Go into
Mhm.
this.
Okay, yeah. So obviously there's like a bajillion parts of the brain, but when we're thinking about our thought processes, we kind of have two parts. We have that higher human part that makes decisions. This is the part that can plan. This is the part that literally makes us human that animals don't have. They function on what we have as well, which is that lower brain. This is the part that does the routines. This is also the part that like keeps us alive, like helps us breathe and, beats our heart, all the things that are unconscious, but we also delegate things down to this part of the brain that are very easy to do. So for example, brushing your teeth, you don't have to think through this. You don't have to use any higher brain power because you've done it so many times. It's been delegated down to the lower brain. Sometimes even driving is this way. So I have teenagers. I've taught so far 3 out of the 4. Got one coming up this year. Get her driving as well. But when you teach teenagers to drive, they have to think about it a lot. And my most recent one, she was like, which one is the gas and which one is the brake? Like she had to really think through, like, this way for gas, this way for brake. And we made mistakes on that several times, thankfully, just in parking lots. But now, if you think about driving, you are not using your higher brain to move your foot to the gas. You just know that's the way. That's delegated down to the lower brain. You even can sometimes like get home and be like, did I pass the park? Because it's just so automatic, right? So these are the kinds of things that we delegate down. The other thing we delegate a lot is eating. We serve up the same amount because of the habit. We eat unconsciously. We can eat. We can bring a fork to our mouth and eat without paying any attention to it as we're looking at our phone, as we're scrolling Instagram, as we're watching TV, right? All of the eating can happen unconsciously. Basically, you're not having to consciously think about picking up the fork where we did when we were toddlers, right? You watch a toddler try to learn how to eat. Like it's very higher brain. They're really making the effort. So one way we can bring eating back into the higher brain is to eat without distractions, to put away our phones, not eat in front of the TV, like put a plate on a table, sit down, um, you know, I just put your butt in a chair and eat, right? Like just be eating. It's very boring at first if you're used to always having something with you, but you'll realize how you haven't paid much attention to the food. The other thing you can do to really bring eating up into the higher brain is to plan your meals ahead of time. So what my clients do is they make a 24-hour plan. So, and I usually call it the 24-hour practical plan. So please don't put salads for every meal when you first start doing this. Right?
Practical people, practical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to up level maybe just one thing a week. But so I want you to write down like everything you're going to eat in the day for breakfast, I'm going to have oatmeal. For lunch, I'm going to have a ham sandwich. And for dinner, we're going to have stir fry over rice, whatever. That decision, if you write that down in the morning, you've used your higher brain, because your lower brain cannot plan. It does not have that ability. And so when you make your food decisions with your higher brain, you're very unlikely to write down a half a chocolate cake for lunch. Very unlikely, right? You're very unlikely to plan eating things that aren't going to align with your goals. And so then in the moment when you're like, you know what sounds good is half a chocolate cake, then we go into my think well pillar, and we're going to work on the thoughts on that. But as far as keeping the eating in the higher brain, planning and eating without distractions are two of the very first things I do with clients.
Which is so good. Do you ever come against this barrier? So this is a process, right? And you're walking them through a process. They are changing as a human being as they go through your program. Do you get kickback on speed of change?
Oh, yes.
And how do you, I'm doing this on purpose because me too. What is your go-to, like, I guess you talk on that. Like, what's your go-to to help people through the process?
Yeah. I mean, weight loss is not easy. That's the truth. And I think we have been fed a lie when we read see these magazine articles, lose 50 pounds in 20 weeks. I don't know. I don't know their weeks. And it's just always ridiculous is what I'm saying. Right. Yeah. But we've been sold these promises of how fast we can lose weight. And first of all, like, that's not realistic. Like, and if they are doing it, then they're not doing it in a healthy way. So I always set up the expectation that this is going to be a slow process. Like, do not plan to lose more than 0.5 to 1 pound per week. So for sure, just setting up the expectation. But there's so much when clients are like, I didn't lose any weight this week. I mean, sometimes we're just like, let's just put the scale away. Let's look at other metrics. Let's look at energy level. I have clients that are like, I just get up from a chair now. Like, I don't make a noise when I get up. I love when they say things like that. I have another client who recently said, I'm becoming emotionally stronger, which is even becoming more important to me than becoming thinner. And she had already lost 20 pounds, but she realized the emotional strength that she was getting from eating in just a more purposeful, intentional way and making choices on her food that were like, actually, this is what I really want to eat. When people say like, I just want to eat whatever I want. Like, do you? Think about how that makes you feel. And so really just getting in touch with her body. So we have to look at the small and simple wins. And so, yeah, there is pushback on how long it takes to change. And so I'll say this one more other thing is, if you're doing this on your own without a coach, try to have a lot of other metrics besides the scale. Give yourself 1 to 10 scales. So for example, I have clients that say, I want to have more energy. So if this is one of your goals, like, I want more energy. Well, what is your energy today? And how are you measuring that? How are you deciding that you don't have energy and that you need more of it? And so you can give yourself a scale. Okay, so this week on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being I couldn't get out of bed any of the days, and 10 being I had the perfect amount of energy. I was focused through the day. And then when it was 10 o'clock and time for bed, I fell right asleep, right? Like, that would be the perfect amount of energy, is to not to stay up all night. That's too much energy, right? So if we have that perfect amount and we're like, and I didn't have to caffeinate throughout the day, where am I today? Well, I'm a 5, I'm a 6. And in 12 weeks, I'd like to be a 7. Like, that's where we want to get to, a 7 or an 8, like just up the scale a little. So give yourself a score on a scale of 1 to 10, if that works for your brain, so that you can easily measure. Because guess what? If you are at a 5 or 6 today, and in 12 weeks, you're at a 7, you're still not at a 10. So you're going to say, I still need more energy, but you have increased. There's just more to your health journey and your weight loss than the scale. Maybe you can rate your sleep. Am I sleeping better? Because I'll notice when clients change up what they're eating for dinner or their late night eating, they end up sleeping better. So that can be something you can rate. And I feel like my sleep is at a 7 and now it's at an 8. Like that is progress. So we want to see the progress because our brains are like, well, if I'm not all the way there, I haven't made any progress. And so that's a way also on that pushback of rate of change is to see it. And so at the end of 12 weeks, I'll ask my clients like the same questions without telling them what they rated themselves at the beginning. Like, so what would you say your energy level is today? I'm not trying to trick them, but they don't have it written down, right? I have it written down. And they're like, oh, I know, like a 7. And I'm like, what? You were a 4 when we started, and they're amazed. They're like, really? We just don't remember well. That's the truth. We just don't.
It is. And I think it's so easy to not worry about writing something down, to go like, I'll
Mm-hmm.
remember. And what you just
Mm-hmm.
said, we don't remember well. So if it's not written down, it's so satisfying to go back to that piece of paper and look at the scales that you're talking about. And
Mm-hmm.
especially for our number people who go, I need to weigh in because I'm a numbers person. And I'm like, I get it. But you're providing this whole other number system that gives them still a scale of success. It just looks
Mm-hmm.
different than just banking on the bathroom scale. So there's different
Yeah.
ways to get that data points in. And I love that
Yeah.
you brought that up. Thank you. Yeah. So if somebody were to go through your program, how many weeks is it and how is it laid out?
So I coach in 12-week segments.
I think the average person, our listeners, don't 100% understand a program or
Yeah.
coursework because most of us haven't been through it. So if
Yeah.
somebody were to sign up with you, what would that process look like?
Okay, yeah. So I always do an initial evaluation. So we kind of take a whole health history. And then each week, so it is 12 weeks, each week I have what I consider kind of a lesson, like a new concept or tool for them for the week. So early on, it's a lot of teaching during our sessions, one-on-one sessions, and those are an hour long. And so I'll end up teaching the concept for like 30 minutes, and then we coach on it or we bring in examples from their life. That's what coaching is. And then as the sessions progress, those tools and those teachings get shorter and shorter because I want to leave more and more time for coaching as they're understanding what they're getting out of coaching. And then they bring more things. They're like, oh, I understand she can help me with this. Because at first, when you first join a coaching program, you're not really sure what to bring to sessions. So
Sure.
I start with more teaching. So I start by teaching them the self-coaching model tool that I use with all my clients, which takes them through the difference of, so it goes circumstance, thought, feeling, action, result. So we have the circumstances in our lives. These are just the facts. So everybody would agree. So your scale weight goes here because it's a data point. But the thought, I need to lose weight, goes in the thought line. Even if a doctor told you you need to lose weight, it's still a thought because the data point or the circumstance, the actual fact is just your scale weight, which is the gravitational pull on your body at that moment in time, right? It's math. And then we have a thought behind it. And then that generates a feeling, which is the emotional vibration that comes from a thought, which then drives our action and leads to the results in our lives. And you'll find that the result always connects back to the thought, not the circumstance. We want to blame or say that the circumstance is the reason we are getting this result, but it is our thought about it. And there's several ways I can show that, but that's just a quick and dirty. That's like what we cover the first session. And then we dive into thoughts and feelings, which is how to process a craving. We do exercises. So there's a lot of guided journaling. So each week there's just a different tool that I'm going to teach them. And the model is the basis, but I have several others and concepts and wasting food and clean plate club and our primary programmers, what did our parents teach us about food and all of that goes into how we're thinking about food and our bodies today.
So this is for the individual who is done with dieting. They have been there, done that. They are really ready for change to the
Mm-hmm.
point that they're willing to put this at the top of their priority list for the next 12 weeks. and follow you and go
Mhm.
through what you're asking them to go through, right? Like, because I
Yeah.
think the important thing is it's not a quick fix. It is like you have to do the work. If people have ever done any other program, you work the program. And if you're not working the program is not going to work, right? And I just
Yeah.
feel like that's important for people to hear that it's on their shoulders. I'm taking a course right now, and it is everything in me sometimes to not be like, oh, I'm just going to skip that part. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, you signed up for this. You have to dot every I and cross every T because there's learning in all of it. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. One of the things that I think my program covers is the things the diets didn't teach you. When you got a diet book and it gave you a food plan and an exercise or whatever, there was never a chapter on when you don't feel like doing this, here's what to do. When you have a craving for something other than what's on this good food, bad food list, here's how you manage it. And that is what no diet plan, no food plan, no meal plan ever told you what to do. And so that's really where that think well pillar comes in, is that's all the mental part. And people think, well, I'm not an emotional eater because I don't cry face down in a tub of ice cream. Anytime we're choosing to eat when we're not physically hungry, it's because it's the idea of the brain, which then is the emotion of eating. I do it. I'm not saying that nobody ever emotional eats, but we just got to be clear that if we're not physically hungry, it's emotional eating. And then we have to be really, really purposeful on that and decide, you know what, I'm going to do that right now. No problem. And other times we're going to not do it.
right. And you just hit the nail on the head. It's being intentional about it. It's acknowledging the fact that I do actually want this. I'm not doing it because I just walked through the kitchen and accidentally grabbed it. I'm not doing it. Like you can say, I know I'm not hungry and I still want it. And that's when I always tell my clients too, I'm like, then have it. Like, then if you don't have it, you're kicking into deprivation mode and that land is no good
Mm-hmm.
either. So
Mm-hmm.
yes. Where is the
Yeah.
best place to find you? And if they're like, this sounds interesting and it really could be something for me. I feel like I was on your website and I saw kind of you have a setup, let's get to know each other type of call. I forget what you named it.
Yeah. Oh, just it's kind of a terrible name. It's like free strategy session or something like that. But basically, I mean, I'm just going to answer your burning question. And I think if you have no idea if coaching is going to work for you until you try a little bit of coaching. So hop on a call with me if you want to see what coaching is like. And that's really the easiest way to determine if it works for you. But another great way too is, well, you can find me on Instagram and I'm well_with_Lisa, but you can also download my free go-to meals e-guide. And this is just a way for you to kind of start setting up some of those where I was talking about planning your meals and using your higher brain. Having go-to meals keeps you out of confusion. Like when you go to eat lunch and you're like, I don't know, I've never made anything good for lunch in my whole life. My brain will do that. If your brain has ever been like, I don't know what to eat, having some go-to things, like sitting down and just making some decisions ahead of time will help you in those moments where you're like, I don't know what to eat. You have some go-to ideas. So that guide walks you through how to create that, gives you like some of my examples just to get you started, a couple of my recipes, and then an empty worksheet for you to do your own. So I'm sure we'll put that link in the show notes.
Absolutely. And it's such a great way. It goes back to that. If we fail to plan, we're planning to fail.
Yep.
You are providing this, print it off, have it sitting on your counter, make it a family thing, a Sunday thing, whatever visually brings you back to it every week. You will do better accidentally just by filling this out. So I love that
Yeah.
you have that as a free option for everyone. I always like to ask my guests this whole like, if our listeners heard nothing else and you could wrap your arms around them and just say, hey, just this one thing, make sure that you heard this, what would that look like for you?
I think what I want to just preach from the rooftops is when you overeat or when you eat something that feels not great in your body, because we all do it, right?
Mm.
Don't punch yourself in the face with your thoughts about it.
Mm.
So your body already feels yucky, right? So this would be me if I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to have a bowl of ice cream. I'm lactose intolerant. That is a bad idea. Okay. I'm always going to feel bad in my body when I do that. But now, or if you just eat beyond fullness and you're feeling like, ugh, yuck, don't punch yourself in the face by telling yourself you're bad or wrong or shouldn't have, or you failed again. We always want to just say, you know what, my very next bite is going to be on track. And so we just want to not be so unkind to ourselves when these things happen. Don't say things to yourself you wouldn't say to your daughter if she was in the same situation. And so I just like to think, don't punch yourself in the face with your thoughts.
That's so good. I feel like we all need to write that down somewhere. And I can just picture listeners going, "Oh, I like her. I want to hear what guests she would bring on, and what are some of your fun topics that you could lure our listeners over to hearing
Oh,
that you've
on
been
my
excited?"
podcast? Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but in March, I did a great movement series with a trainer and then a yoga professional. Then I did a solo episode on all the ways that our bodies burn. So getting in your NEAT, which is your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So that was a great episode. And then I think the series I'm most looking forward to is I'm going to be doing one on menopause. I've interviewed a menopause doctor who's like really good with hormone replacement therapy. And then I have a couple of menopause coaches that we're going to talk about the lifestyle. Everyone always is like, well, I'm in menopause, like I can't lose weight now, but there's just so many things that you can do. So I'm really looking forward to publishing that series, which maybe is going to be coming out around the time this comes out.
Yes, I have so many people I would already send that way. I feel like it's debunking the myths of this menopause or breaking down the limiting beliefs that we can no
Yeah.
longer be how we want to be, because it's a
Yeah.
crazy topic that thank you for addressing it, because we need so much more valid information around it.
Yeah.
It's
What's
accessible.
crazy, I'll just pop this in to say that the doctor mentioned we just used to die, by the way. Menopause is actually a new phenomenon for women
Mm.
because now our lifespan is so much longer and now we're expected to live decades with no hormones. It doesn't make any sense. And so it's like, it's crazy that we aren't studying it more because it affects half the population. And we used to not be affected by it. If we look at human history, we used to not really be affected by menopause because shortly after that, we died. So
Morbid, but yeah. It's like,
isn't that crazy to think about? And so he's like, it doesn't make any sense that we're expected to basically live half our lives without these hormones that have kept us working for the first half of our life.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
just a little,
crazy.
yeah.
A little nugget, a little
Yeah.
fun fact for the day. Yes. You have been an absolute treat. Thank you so much for all your wisdom that you poured over us today
Thank
and
you.
in your time. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.